So today's conversation is really about a challenge we're seeing more and more with digital leaders. Many organisations are scaling Power Platform and now introducing Copilot and AI, but are wrestling with how to do that safely, sustainably, and at pace without slowing innovation or creating unnecessary bureaucracy. The Centre of Excellence plays a critical role here, but the way COEs operate has to evolve. Today is about exploring how the COE can shift from being seen as a gatekeeper to become an enabler of fast, safe delivery, even in an AI-enabled world. So let me introduce today's speakers. So firstly, we have Sarah Nixon, who's lead business analyst here at Marra, and she'll be sharing insights on evolving the COE and governing Power Platform and Copilot at scale. Secondly, we have Joanne Todd, Chief Information Officer at St John Ambulance, who will be joining us for a live conversation on their journey scaling Power Platform in a complex organisation. And finally, we'll have Aoife Dempsey, Enterprise AI Business Process Specialist at Microsoft, who will be sharing Microsoft's perspective on AI, Copilot, and governance. And now we'll pass over to Zara.
Great. Thanks, Ben. So, hi everyone, I'm Sarah from Marra, and today I want to talk about how organisations can govern Power Platform and Copilot at scale, but without slowing people down, and why this requires a fundamental shift in how we think about the Centre of Excellence. So, most organisations are past experimentation now. Power Platform solutions are business critical, and Copilot adoption is accelerating, and the scrutiny around security, data and value has increased. So governance is no longer optional, but if we get it wrong, it becomes a blocker instead of an enabler. And in a rapidly evolving technology landscape, moving slowly simply isn't an option. So the core message of this session is simple. Modern governance only works when the Centre of Excellence evolves from oversight into a sustainable delivery engine. So how does the COE model need to evolve? So the old way of running a Centre of Excellence can't keep up with how organisations now build, use and scale digital tools, especially with the introduction of AI and Copilot in the mix. So firstly, if we consider what the traditional COE was designed for. So older models were built for slower, more controlled world, and their job was to review solutions before they went live, enforce standards so that everything looked and behaved consistently, and protect the organisation from risk through approvals and governance. Now, those responsibilities still matter, but they were created for a time when only a small number of specialists were building things. So next, let's consider why that model no longer works. So modern organisations now have hundreds or even thousands of makers. So that's people who are building apps, automations and AI-powered solutions. There's a faster delivery expectation where waiting weeks for approvals is unacceptable now. And AI tools like Copilot let non-technical staff create things instantly. And there's also a higher risk of shadow IT because people can build without waiting for the central team to get involved. So if a COE tries to govern all of this using slow reactive approvals, it becomes a bottleneck and it simply can't scale. Therefore, what a modern COE needs to do instead, it needs to shift from a gatekeeper to an enabler with guardrails. So what this means is supporting large numbers of makers, not just reviewing their work, standardizing quality but at speed, so using templates, policies and automation, providing reusable assets so people aren't having to reinvent the wheel, enabling safe use of AI and not blocking it, and embed continuous improvement rather than one-off reviews, and also actively preventing shadow IT. And to do this, you need to make the official path the easiest path. So this is a move from reactive governance, so kind of approvals after the fact, to a more proactive operation model where guardrails are actually built into the process. So the core message here is The traditional COV model was built for control, but the modern COV is built for scale, speed, and safe empowerment. So if we move on to governing at scale and what this actually means. So governance at scale is often misunderstood. It's not about heavy sign-off boards or endless documentation. Governing at scale means designing governance so it works automatically as adoption grows. So instead of relying on people, meetings, or manual policing. In practice, what this means is a clear environment strategy. So intentional separation of dev, test, production, so that people know where they need to build, where they need to test, and what production means, and also, crucially, who owns each space. It also means strong identity and access controls. So access needs to be role-based and intentional so that people only have what they need by default. Then application lifecycle management and pipelines. Deployments need to be automated and repeatable, not dependent on individuals. And visibility and monitoring. We need to see what's being built, who owns it, and most crucially, what data it's touching. And then security and data protection by design. So we need to ensure that guardrails have been built into the process, not written in a policy document. And I think that's a really, really important one. And finally, standards that scale. So helping people build safely and consistently, not restricting them. And again, we make the right way to build the easy way. So when governance at scale, when it works, makers should feel confident to build and to innovate. IT should have assurances without the need to micromanage, and leaders will have visibility and control. And what this means is that Copilot and AI can produce safely without fear. And that's why governing at scale isn't about control. It's about creating the conditions where innovation can thrive safely. So moving on to the COV as the enabler of scalable governance. And this is where the Centre of Excellence becomes critical. So a modern COV isn't a team that controls everything. It's an engine that enables safe, repeatable delivery. And at Marra, our COV version 2 model structures this across 8 pillars. So we have business strategy and transition, people enablement, governance and admin, technology strategy, methodology, user experience, measurement and value, and finally, enablement and tooling. And each of these pillars breaks down into various themes and topics and activities, giving organisations a clear roadmap for maturity rather than a one-size-fits-all rulebook. And crucially, this model adapts, so based on organisational size, risk and regulatory context, and also digital maturity. So all the way from early experimentation through to enterprise scale AI supported delivery. So where does AI and Copilot fit safely? AI is often where organisations jump too quickly. Copilot and Copilot Studio are incredibly powerful, but AI is not the starting point. Governance is. So what we see is many teams jump straight to, what can Copilot build for us? How fast can we roll it out? Who can have a license? But without governance, AI just helps people move faster in the wrong environments, reuse bad data, or automate poor processes, and also create shadow IT. But now they're doing all of that with AI assistance. So instead of reducing risk, AI quietly scales it. So without strong foundations, AI can amplify problems. And I'll go through a couple of examples to bring this to life a little bit. So first of all, if you have poor data quality, AI will give you confident answers, but it's actually built on unreliable data. If you don't have clear ownership, then no one's accountable for anything that AI generates. And if you have inconsistent patterns, then you're going to have dozens of slightly different solutions, albeit faster. An AI-assisted shadow IT. You may have well-intended users bypassing controls, but now they have more power than ever. However, once governance maturity is in place, AI can safely add real value. So now I'm going to talk about the opportunity that governance gives us. So firstly, governance and monitoring. So AI helps you see the estate more clearly. So it can highlight any, say, apps that are overshared. It could spot unused or abandoned assets, and it can identify failing flows or any policy gaps. In terms of technology and methodology, AI supports consistency and quality. So things like drafting solution designs, flagging missing documentation, or recommending reusable components. And also people enablement. So AI helps people work confidently within boundaries. So it can suggest different learning pathways, it can summarize requirements, and it can accelerate delivery, but without bypassing controls. So at Marra, we introduce AI inside of the process, not outside of it. So we use templates, not improvisation. So AI works within agreed patterns and structures. So instead of ask Copilot to build an app, a flow, a solution, however it wants, you say use Copilot within our agreed templates, patterns, and structures. We have controls, not autonomy, so freedom within guardrails, not outside of them. People don't get more freedom than the organisation is ready for. So AI works within existing guardrails, such as environment strategy, access control, various DLP policies, and so on. And then insights, not decisions. So we want humans to stay accountable. So for example, if you have insights such as these apps look overshared, this flow is failing frequently, or even these solutions lack ownerships. The decisions whether to shut things down, approve releases, or simply accept the risk, those decisions stay with humans who are accountable. And then finally, incremental maturity, not disruption. So AI capability grows as governance grows. You don't roll out AI everywhere on day one. You start with low risk use cases and you expand as visibility and controls improve, and you scale only where confidence exists. So to summarize all of that, Copilot doesn't replace governance. Governance is what makes Copilot safe, valuable, and scalable. And AI is powerful, but only when the organization is ready for it. So, what are the foundations of sustainable delivery? In simple terms, the foundations are the conditions that make safe scale possible. So they ensure that when you introduce AI, it accelerates good behaviors instead of magnifying bad habits. And they're not nice to haves. They're what stops innovation collapsing under its own weight. Now, they depend on the four kind of core foundations here on the screen. So firstly, people and capability. So in practice, this means that everyone knows who owns what. So apps, flows, data, decisions. It means citizen developers are enabled, but they're not left to guess. And it means communities exist, but with guardrails, not a free-for-all. And measurement and value. So this is the shift from the question, are we compliant, to is this delivering value and where should we invest next? And in practice, it means visibility of what's being built and used, and insight into outcomes, not just the activities, and reporting that leaders can actually act on. Standards and enablements. This means reusable components instead of reinvention, starter kits instead of blank pages, and application lifecycle management frameworks instead of ad hoc releases, and consistent delivery flows instead of heroics. And lastly, integration and coherence. In practice, this means clear architecture decisions, environment strategies people actually follow, and security and data boundaries that are enforced, not optional. So ultimately, these foundations are what makes innovation safe, scalable, and sustainable. So that AI is actually strengthening delivery rather than exposing any weaknesses. So how do organisations get started? So if I leave you with anything practical, it's this. So define your environment strategy first. Introduce application lifecycle management early, even if it's minimal. You don't need enterprise grade pipelines on day one, but you do need a repeatable way to move work forward. Document ownership. Clarity removes most risks. So for every app, flow, or Copilot, someone owns it, someone is accountable, and also someone knows when it should be retired. Create visibility. Dashboards can change conversations, so you can move from opinions to evidence. And treat Copilot governance as an extension, not an add-on, so you don't need to invent a new rulebook for AI. And invest in people. Empowered makers are your strongest control. This means training, clarity, and support. So governance doesn't have to be perfect to be effective. It just has to be intentional. So start small, start deliberately, and improve as you go. So my final message is governance isn't about slowing people down. It's about giving them the confidence to move faster, safely, sustainably, and at scale. So when the Centre of Excellence evolves from oversight to enablement, Power Platform and Copilot stop being risks to manage and become engines for transformation. And that brings me to the end of my insights. So thanks everyone for listening. I'm now going to hand over to Aoife from Microsoft.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, so you can pop on to the next slide there. My name is Aoife Dempsey, and I'm an AI business process solution specialist in Microsoft. So focusing on all things Power Platform and Copilot Studio. And today, what I'm hoping to bring is to just add to Sarah's points around how the two platforms are combined to help you to scale your automation. And what we're seeing within Microsoft at the moment is honestly a really refreshing challenge. It's that Power Platform and Copilot is accelerating quickly, and with more apps and more automation and more business-led innovation, the combination is obviously incredibly powerful, but it also raises some important questions and ones that Marra can help with, and ones that we're very cognizant of at Microsoft with our security first mindset, and that is how do you do this safely? How do you scale it safely? How do you avoid sprawl? And how do you make sure that governance doesn't slow you down? It actually speeds you up in the long term. And I suppose that's where the Centre of Excellence really does come in. But the role of it is changing as well within organisations, and we're seeing that kind of every day. Historically, Centre of Excellence were often seen as gatekeepers with approval processes, manual reviews, and centralised control. But what we're seeing now is, and what we're strongly encouraging, is a shift away from that model, like Sarah alluded to earlier, where the modern Power Platform and Copilot COE, it's about enablement rather than restriction. It's about getting the right guardrails in place. So things like your environment strategy, things like your data loss prevention policies, managed environments, and your life cycle management, so that your teams can actually move quickly and confidently without creating that dreaded risk for IT or for your security teams. And I suppose from our perspective, a really important point to make is that upfront, Copilot doesn't sit outside of the government, outside the governance model. Copilot Studio and AI agents are built directly within the Power Platform. So that means that they inherit the same environments, the same data policies, and the same security model. And I suppose the same reporting capabilities as well, as Sarah alluded to. So in other words, if you already have a Power Platform government strategy, or if you don't, now is definitely the time that to get started, so that you're extending what you already have when it comes to Copilot and expanding your AI capabilities. And I suppose from our perspective is the goal is not governance for governance sake. It's really, like Sarah alluded to, it's so that when you put in good prompts, you get good data back from those prompts. So the goal is governance for today's fast scaling world is to enable innovation safely, sustainably, at pace, and in an AI enabled world. So the takeaway from us is get your center of excellence in place. It might feel a little bit painful initially, but it really will help you to speed up and scale in the longer term. So I can pass back over to Joanne, who I believe is speaking next.
Yes, and just a little bit of an introduction to Joanne there. So we're really happy to have you here today to have a conversation. And so Joanne is the Chief Information Officer at St John's Ambulance. So Joanne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so as you just said, my name's Joanne Todd. I am the Chief Information Officer for St John Ambulance. I've been there about 3.5 years. The whole mission and purpose and vision at St John Ambulance is to put the power of first aid into people's hands. So imagine if you had a medical emergency while you were in the centre of Newcastle and everybody around you could provide that life-saving resuscitation capability. How amazing would that be? And that's what we're trying to achieve. Now that you might say is a far away from the conversation that we've had so far, but by no means is it. So I'm quite looking forward to this conversation.
Excellent. Thanks, Joanne. So to set the scene, can you give us an overview of how complex the St John's Ambulance Power Platform estate is?
Yeah, so we have a large number of power apps and power flows, but if I look at the ones that we've counted up, because like you said earlier, they do seem to spring up quite quickly from all sorts of locations. So I think our latest official number is that we have 900 power apps, which we've kind of built and put around our register of those apps and using that centre of excellence. I think there's still a lot of space for us to go and do a little bit of cleanup on some of the other ones, but also looking at where we can expand and how we can move that forward. But the complexity of St John Ambulance is we are a volunteer-led organisation, so we have up to 20,000 volunteers across England, depending on what you class as an active volunteer, and 1,500 staff. So across all of that, you can imagine there are a lot of people who are very clever and who do all of this in their day job and actually want to do the best for the organisation, but want to do that in their volunteering world as well. So that's back to where you were saying about, how do we allow that to grow in a safe manner, but using those centre of excellence government guide rails and guardrails that are in place to do that.
Great. Yeah, and that really helps us have some context around the environment that you're operating at St John's. So with your digital partners, you've started the journey for forming a centre of excellence. So what does establishing a COV mean in the context of St John's Ambulance? And what problems is it hoping to address and opportunities to present?
So we've been working closely with yourselves at Marra, which has been a real joy actually, because of the flexibility and the way that you've worked with us as we've started our learning journey. I think it's safe to say that everybody has a view, like you said earlier, about what a centre of excellence is. We've used them for a long time in technology, but we've tended to use them as a stick rather than a carrot. And I think inside St John, what I'm hoping to get out of them is those kind of patterns and templates and a safe space for people, but where we promote that innovation and we promote citizen developers, because let's be really honest about it, the whole point of low code, no code is that I don't have to find a really clever dev. The whole point is that we can put the power of that into people's hands, just like we're trying to put the power of first aid there. So for us, I think for me, it's about giving a framework of which people can work inside of and innovate, but which also allows me to make sure people are safe. Because throughout all of this, it isn't just about, it is about very much about keeping the organisation safe, but also all of our volunteers. So if they decide to build something on their own kit, have we made sure they've done it in a safe environment so they aren't then going to be unsafe in that digital world? So I think for us, that's kind of where it is. Are we there yet? No, we're on that journey. And I don't think you ever stop the journey, if I'm really honest, because just when you think you've closed one thing, something else appears. And so that constant learning as well is something else we're trying to teach.
Yeah, great. And in touching on kind of all of the volunteers that you have within your organisation, at this early stage, it's vital that you bring people along with you, so both your staff and your wide number of volunteers. So how are you beginning to shape the conversations internally so that teams understand what a COV is, but also what it isn't?
So inside a technology domain, people are quite used to that concept of a center of excellence and how it gives you your patterns and your templates and your reusability. So there's less of a sell inside the digital technology team as there is across the wider estate. And we all assume that everybody has a base understanding of what we mean by keeping people safe and being able to allow you to innovate. But they don't. So anybody who knows me knows I love a good analogy. So I use a chicken analogy, and I don't mean kind of like really dumb chickens that are just pecking around. I'm kind of like in like chicken run sassy chickens. So for me, the field and the fence around it is the safe environment. So stay in my field, don't jump my fence, and I will keep the foxes away from you and give you a lovely, happy life. I think before we even got to that point, though, we had to decide what our ethics were as an organization. And I think it's really important in anything in the world of AI to understand what you will and what you won't do and what those ethics are around your organization. So an example of that for St. John is please don't go off and find somewhere in a random location on the internet how to provide first aid help. Use the sources that are our sources that we know are checked, we know are valid, and we know will work. So again, get those ethics. So I want to be a free range chicken farmer. I don't want to be a battery farmer. There's my ethics there. The field around with the fences, the safety, so the guardrails, the guide rails. I want you to eat my food and I would like you really to produce some eggs. But actually, how you do that's your choice. So you can go running around, you can jump up a tree, you can watch your mates, decide which way is the best way to do it. But as long as you work in those boundaries, have at it and create that innovation. If it works, amazing, we'll build field number 2 and field number 3. If it doesn't work, do you know what? That's all right too, because actually we might need to build you a little house for the rain or something else that goes with it. But it's okay because actually in the world of innovation, if it doesn't work, that's as valuable as if it does work. And that's what we need to learn in the fast world of AI and around those power apps and power platforms.
Amazing. And I love that chicken analogy. I'm a big fan of Chicken Run myself, the film. So yeah, and I think it is a really good way of illustrating the situation, and it really helps people get their head around it. So one of the biggest concerns when it comes to governance is how to use AI tools securely. So at St. John's Ambulance, you've introduced around 150 Copilot licenses. So what guardrails have you put in place to ensure that it's used in a safe and also ethical way?
So from a co-piloting perspective, we were really fortunate that our Microsoft partners and Microsoft themselves gave us a level of investment to help us on our co-pilot journey. So we created a community, a centre of excellence of co-piloters. We're not very imaginative in naming conventions, just putting that out there. And that also included that partner. But what we did with that is we recognized that we needed to bring people's learning skills up. We needed to get them to understand the right and the wrong of how to do things. But also they learned from each other and they created that community, which then created that bigger learning and that drive. And it wasn't all about work. So, you don't have to do a work challenge in Copilot to learn how to write a good prompt, to learn how to make it work. So that community then got issued like little challenges along the way to try and do it. And that's something we're hoping to grow out as we create what we're going to call a citizen developer community, which gives them more than just Copilot and gives them some of those additional low code, no code tooling that they can do. But that whole concept of working together with that learning, but with partners, because we shouldn't be doing this on our own. We're not going to keep up the pace of that learning if we don't bring in people like yourselves to help us and challenge us in that process.
Right. And obviously there's still a lot of work in the roadmap, but what are the small but meaningful wins that signal that you're moving in the right direction?
So from a co-pilot perspective, nobody has wanted to give their license back. And when we've tried to take it off them, they haven't been very happy people. And actually, we're not seeing lack of usage. So that in itself, an uptake of a brand new piece of technology working alongside somebody is great. But from the Power App perspective, I've got kind of 3 examples, if that's all right, to kind of share with you. So we've got one, which is how we approve purchase orders. Now, we had a Microsoft form before that did that, but you never knew if somebody else had approved it. It was really hard to look at the control. You didn't know what was going on behind. Now we've changed that, and that's now a Power App. So it's great for me as an improver, an approver, to kind of go, oh well, I know somebody else has done that one, so I don't need to panic to get logged on to get that approved. But there's lots of other stuff behind the scenes which has given us great. Another really good one for us is one of our volunteers in Manchester created an events app, which was all about kind of letting other people express interest to want to come and attend events. Now, that's brilliant because that was created by somebody who wasn't in our digital community initially. And it's really working well as that kind of citizen developer. So they had a problem, they worked with us to put a solution in place, and now it's working out there on the wider estate. And then we've also improved how we allow people to report safeguarding issues, because obviously we are a charity that provides care, and we need to make sure that we have that ability to do that really tightly. And we've done a great job of improving that. There's lots and lots of other examples, but they were the kind of 3 that made my heart sing a little bit around kind of, and give you a different view of some of the different fields we've done it in as well.
Great, and thanks for sharing those wins, because I think it's really helpful to understand real world examples and hear the impact that those type of wins are making for yourselves. So when you look ahead, say 12 months, what does good progress look like for St John's Ambulances COV?
So I think it's twofold. So do we have a thriving community of citizen developers who are out there looking for small wins and innovation of what we can do? Our new strategy, which is out there, has a whole section on brilliant basics, and this is classic for that. It also has a section on looking future focused and innovation, which allows us to build those skills and that technique. We've got lots of what I would politely call dogleg processes. And for me, if I can see those reducing and our wider development community coming together, that would be my quick win. But it's not easy. You know, it will take time, it will take investment, it will take energy from my teams in order to make that happen, to build that advocacy and get that moving. So if I was sat here in 12 months' time and I could say to you, I had, I don't know, 300 citizen developers, and they'd gone off and created another 100 Power Apps, of which 60 of them are productionized and on the estate, and the rest we kind of went, yeah, they did the job, but they weren't what we wanted, I'd be really happy bunny.
Yeah, sounds great. And I guess my final question before we open it up to everyone else, for organisations right at the beginning of the journey, just like you, what's the one thing you'd encourage them to focus on first?
Don't try and learn it all yourself. You know, there are partner organisations on purpose, and you know, like yourselves at Marra, who actually are doing this day in and day out with a lot of learning from a number of clients. So for me, respectfully reuse all of that learning, bring that in, you know, work as an ecosystem with also your teams, your citizen developers, your suppliers, because that's how you'll get more power to move this forward. And don't be afraid to kind of go, well, I don't really know how to do that, and reach out into your networks and go, I've got this great problem, but I don't really quite know what to do with it. And you know, it's all right as well if it's not a low code, no code solution, because actually what you've done is qualified it out and said that one doesn't fit for this type of technology. AI doesn't solve everything. You know, it is another huge and amazing thing in our toolkit, but it's not always the right answer. But for me, the biggest takeaway I could give to anybody in here is please use your partners, go find some trusted friends, but make them true partners, bring them into your organization and share.
Amazing. Thanks, Joanne. Great insights there. And I'm sure that'll be really valuable to everyone on the call today or listening to this webinar. So I'm going to hand back to Ben now.
Thanks, Sarah and Joanne, for that really great insight. It was great to hear sort of how St. John Ambulance has governed Power Platform and Copilot. So yes, we've now reached our Q&A session. So from my perspective, Sarah, I suppose, how would you get started with this if someone was to reach out to someone like an external consultant like Marra?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Ben. For many organisations, the best place to start is probably with a maturity assessment. So this creates a kind of clear, shared understanding of where's the organisation today and where does it want to get to, and then I guess ultimately, what needs to change to get them there. So a good example of this is our work with Northumberland County Council. So with them, we began by running a series of collaborative workshops. And attending those workshops were key stakeholders. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to understand what are their priorities, what's their pain points, and also their current level of maturity. Now, this wasn't just a tick box exercise. It was all about creating a safe and open space for conversation and an alignment across business and technology, which I think was really valuable to the organisation. Following those sessions, we completed a structured maturity assessment across our Centre of Excellent Themes, and we played that back to the council and shared all of our findings and their maturity score, and also gave them practical next steps tailored to the council's particular context. But I think what made this engagement particularly successful was how we brought the stakeholders on the journey with us. So this assessment, it almost became a catalyst for positive change. So it drove meaningful conversations and built confidence internally within the council and helped them see what good actually looks like. And quite amazingly, actually, as a result, the council actually improved their maturity score during the assessment. So not just after it and they went to do those steps, but actually as part of the process, they increased their maturity level itself. So I think that was something that was really beneficial to the council. So hopefully that gives you a feel of how you could get started.
Thanks, Sarah, for that great insight. We've had another question in around sort of how would an organisation find the right partner through Microsoft? I suppose, Aoife, that is something that maybe you can give some insight on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I would recommend if you have an account team, just getting in touch with them, discussing what exactly it is that you're trying to achieve, and then usually we'll have partners like Marra and others, depending on the industry, who'll have experience, and we'll usually just go off that experience. So that's typically how we do it, Ben.
That's great. Thanks very much, Aoife, for explaining that. So I suppose the next phase is, so what next? So if governing Power Platform and Copilot is your next priority, please do get in touch with either your Microsoft account manager or Marra, where we can offer a free of charge triage workshop. So a Marra triage workshop is a free half-day session with a Marra consultant designed to help organizations decide what to do next with Power Platform and Copilot, but most importantly, do this with confidence, whether that be making better use of your licenses or really get moving with Power Platform and understanding where Copilot and AI can deliver real return on investment. You can access more information by scanning the QR code on the screen. And if you feel like this could be something that would be beneficial to your organization, it would be truly great to hear from you. So to wrap up today's session, hopefully today has reinforced a key point. Scaling Power Platform and Copilot isn't just a technical challenge, it's also a leadership and governance challenge. Finally, the Centre of Excellence still matters, but it needs to evolve from a gatekeeper model to something that actively enables speed, quality, and safe innovation, especially as AI becomes more accessible across organisations. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our speakers today. So thank you to Sarah for setting the scene and grounding this in practical COE experience. I'd like to say a great thank you to Joanne. Thank you for sharing such an open and honest view of what it looks like in practice at St. John Ambulance. And finally, Aoife, thank you for bringing the Microsoft perspective into the conversation. So if today's session has sparked ideas or raised questions about how this applies in your organisation, we will be sharing the recording and supporting resources shortly for you to take a look at or share with your wider team. So thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of the day, and we hope to speak to you again soon.